last vote that you did, which was 65%.
Yep.
2014, 2015. When was that actually?
Oh, it was in April, I believe.
The end of April.
The end of April, or after we had gone out to all the PLCs.
So every teacher, you guys went to
Every teacher that was assigned in a PLC, sitting in the PLC, went to every one of them. Mr. Kipp, it was 2 long days for him. He went to all the PLCs on an even day, made the presentation. All the PLCs on an odd day, made the presentation. Yep. Went to each one of them. And the PowerPoint he presented was this one. Essentially, all I did was edit it with the notes in red, added in who were the committee members in the first group. But the advantages, the disadvantages, what the schedule looked like, it was the same information.
And I'm confused on this part of the plan time, because you talk about, 65% of the teachers favor this change, but we constantly hear on the other side that teachers want planning time, that the model schools want planning time, and now you're saying 65% of the staff doesn't want planning time. Well, their planning time would be a lot limited. So I guess I'm confused, because I keep hearing we want planning time, but now you're saying we can do away with planning time. So I'm confused.
I would say that it's probably not their #1 choice to say, hey, let's reduce that. But in weighing more contact with students, more time with students, the extra time that they can use, our staff, for the most part, said, I think this is a trade-off we're willing to make.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's a fair question.
I'm not trying to draw a line between you and me. I'm just
No,
trying
that's a fair question.
Really, it's a
I don't want to be
balancing act.
disrespectful.
Yeah,
That's
no.
what I'm trying to say.
Not at all.
65% looked at what we had presented and said, which is more important to us?
Okay.
The additional
Yeah.
team plan or the contact time with students?
It's a balance. We'd love to be able to give them all.
And
All of it.
that's important for me to know, because we constantly talk about that. I served on the calendar committee, as
Yep.
you did too,
Absolutely.
Mr. Norby.
Yep.
And we talked about plan time, so it kind of struck me funny there. I guess.
Yeah, I agree. That's why we wanted to make sure we did our diligence to talk to each of them in their PLCs and present that you realize that if we do this, there's going to be a reduction in planning and PLC time, and 2/3 of the staff said that's a trade-off we're willing to make.
Okay. You talked about 25 to 35% of the students are graduating early because they don't want these electives, they want to move on.
They're choosing to move on and leave those elective opportunities behind. They're choosing to graduate in 3 years or 3.5 and start their venture into the world of work or start their venture into college early. I used 25 to 35%. We did a 4-year study, and that was the range. Some years it's a little lower, and it's about 1/4 of our graduates graduate early, and some years it's much more. It all depends on how big our graduating class is, as far as how the math works.
Would you consider most of those students are probably students that are planning on going on to college, graduating early, or?
I think it's a pretty good mix. Some are ready to hit the world of work, and that's their goal. That's their motivation. And so I think it's a mix.
And I guess the other part of that is, that leaves either 75% of the kids that are in school that either want those electives or want to stay in school for other reasons.
Yeah,
So,
other reasons, athletics, activities, music, some of those things. The opportunity to start some of their college opportunity, their college career while still at Garden City High School, that's an attractive thing to students also is that opportunity to go out to Garden City Community College and take some of the courses out there under the shelter of still being at Garden City High School for some reason.
okay.
Yep.
Another comment you made was that 25% of your staff isn't available to teach classes because they're in PLC time, so, or planning.
Because they're teaching 6 of 8, right?
Yeah.
So 6 of 8.
Question. You talked about your daughter missing her 7th hour. Did I understand that right?
It was afternoons of odd days, so a combination of 5th hour mentoring and 7th hour.
So were they because the teachers were gone, or?
Well, no, it's because she was gone in an activity.
Okay.
And that was her choice, but still, and we have a lot of kids that make that choice to participate, and it's a pretty big burden on them
The
sometimes.
concept there is if you have a class on Wednesday, the previous time you saw that teacher was Monday, next time you'll see them is Friday, if you've gone one day. So there's quite a bit of a gap, whereas if you had a daily contact with that teacher, if you're gone Wednesday, you saw them Tuesday, you'll see them Thursday. And when events are difficult to schedule in the spring, track, various athletics and various activities, if you happen to have a Tuesday-Thursday match, and it's Tuesday-Thursday of that week that you were seeing that teacher, you missed the entire week.
And it's not just activity, it could be illness. I mean, one or two, I can't say well-placed illnesses, but one or two illnesses at the wrong time, and you could not see. I mean, one or two illnesses in an afternoon, you don't see that teacher for a long time. And that's.
And we do have a lot of teachers that participate in sponsoring, helping with activities, activities. So if they're gone, that's an additional time.
One last question, just clarification for me. You talked about night school being from 3:45 to
5:15.
5:15.
And they do that 2 days a week, depending on.
2 days a week. So we have teachers working that time frame.
We are able to provide them with some at-risk funding and pay for it just through at-risk funding. We're limited as how many courses we can offer at that time, just because of that funding, but we do have a little extra funding that will allow us to do some of that night school stuff.
And they're teaching 5 different topics, is that what I heard you say?
We have one teacher that will teach U.S. government. We have one teacher that will teach history.
So 5 classrooms
Yeah, we use 5 per class.
during that time frame?
Yeah.
And you say that's money from at-risk students?
A lot of that's from at-risk, because some of those kids are kids trying to recover those credits.
And some are just positional.
Some are working ahead, some are trying to recover a credit missed earlier.
So in order for us to continue that, because you talked about that, we would have to find ways to fund that, because that at-risk money won't be there forever.
We would probably do a little flexible scheduling with more teachers in a 7-period day available. I could switch 1 or 2 of them to a schedule that allows them to move and teach after school, start their day maybe a little later and teach later. And so you could swing their schedule back and forth a little bit.
Just like
And we could do that with
a 7-period day.
negotiations that we have?
Well, I believe so, as long as we have our teacher and our students in contact with whatever the time is in the negotiated agreement, yeah.
Fair enough. I have others, but I'll let the other board members ask your questions. They're probably some of the same ones. So thank you.
Thank you.
I can't reserve mine until.
Yep.
Interesting stuff. Really appreciate your presentation. It was rapid fire, very interesting. One of the things we have focused on is graduation rate from high school. And you were describing how maybe night school is helping to assure the opportunities for at-risk kids and others to make sure that if they failed more than an 11.5, apparently, they have opportunity to actually get there. And I know one of our goals and one of the state goals in the past has been make sure, actually federal standards is make sure they get a diploma in 4 years. 5 years, we didn't get to count those folks, even though we feel like they got a diploma in 5 years, success. You had mentioned that making kids accountable by reducing their opportunities to recover. I'm mixing 2 statements together, but it's the same point, I think. So there's good news, bad news. On one hand, you up the standards of expectations. On the other hand, less opportunity to recover.
Yeah, and that's, yes, I mean, what we're doing here is reducing or adding some impetus to, I guess, to some students to perform better the first time they perhaps take classes, because you can't go to a PE class and fail it 3 times and still graduate on time, taking away some of that. We're hoping to, as an alternative to some of that, as you said, enhance our night school opportunities to still allow kids to fall in that safety net.
We also have the Ingenuity 2020 for credit recovery, as well as additional credits that we don't, or classes that we don't offer, like Latin. We do that online with the 2020 classroom for Latin.
Yeah, some other innovations there too, like just offering classes online. That's
Yeah, and it could be, so this could be an opportunity for kids to accelerate too.
Okay. It's interesting about how you characterize the kids by the demonstration of their actions, or at least a segment of our student population is saying, we don't need extra electives, we're out of here, so to speak. We're ready for the next step. Have we polled the student body on what they think of this?
No, we haven't gone to a full poll of student body. We've gone out, Mr. Kipp has gone out and talked to different classes of students to gather their input. I know a number of teachers have turned this into, as Mr. White had said, a class activity, a writing assignment. We thought it might be a little presumptuous to go as far as polling the whole student body and things, while there were a couple of questions still hanging out there about whether this was going to be something come into existence or not.
I had the opportunity to talk to the admin classes after the instructor had posed the question to them, and they wrote essays on their opinion of changing the schedule that they were in. And typically, people are afraid of change because it's different. But after I went to the classroom and approached some of the students about the things that would be different and how that would affect them, a lot more of them were positive about the change than they were before we approached it. So I think a lot of it has to do with the information they're given versus just saying, hey, we changed our schedule. They need a little bit more input before they understand the implications.
It's interesting. Has it been covered in the sugar beet, I imagine?
It was a poll question, the sugar beet, yes. I know it's been addressed also with parents, our parent group through site council. I know Mr. Morales did visit with them too.
The vote trend is interesting. You mentioned 2 votes positive overall, although if one wants to draw lines, it's certainly a trend. 78% to 65%. Maybe some of that's weighing all of the information that has come to light as we progress through this. I was curious about when we have more student-teacher contact time, and we have opportunities in a 7-period day that's not there in the block scheduling. We lose. I think you said teachers teach 6 of the 8 blocks.
Yes, 6 of our 8 blocks.
And so part of the give and take here, unfortunately, is we lost teacher planning time. And I'm curious how much of that resource, because it becomes a resource when we're trying to get substitute teachers and long-term subs. We have that challenge of getting teachers out here, like so many people do. And I'm wondering to what extent that's helped us to have that current block schedule versus 27-period day to fill gaps. You mentioned it might help you to fill gaps if we have that regular schedule. So
I'm not sure how it.
process.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it weighs on us as far as teachers coming into the district or leaving the district or.
I'm just talking about vacant positions
Vacant
in which you
positions.
have to ask
Yeah.
the teachers normally would be
Yeah.
planning to fill
Well,
gaps.
and in doing that, we would have more teachers to choose from each time. Well, take that back. We would have fewer teachers to teach from each time. We have more teachers to choose from right now. We have more teachers to choose from in the 6 of 8 because we have more off duty.
So that's one of the downtime aspects on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Just one more. I don't know, I think I'll let go of that.
One question just straight away. Why did Garden City High School change? They used to be at a 7-period schedule, right? And then we moved to a block schedule. What was the reason or the?
I'm sorry, I can't tell you. That was before me. I'm not sure.
From what I recollect from Mr. Morales in the committee as we looked at this, they said they were basically told to change at one point. There wasn't a lot of investigation into a 7-period day versus a block schedule. Someone said, you will be going to a block schedule. So alternating at one point, modified block for a year or 2.
And there were a lot of districts kind of in that time frame that really were moving towards block schedules. That was probably about 97. And that was kind of a since that time, I think we've seen a trend, a lot of districts have moved away from the blocks. But I think I might differ. I think that the issue was studied at the time, and I think the decision was made consciously to try out this new approach, thinking that it would lead to better results for the kids.
One of the things that concerns me is it seems that we have a very large number of at-risk students. And I'm wondering if going to a 7-period schedule would leave less class time for them to do the work in the class. Would there be an increase in homework? Because it seems to me low-income at-risk students have less parental support academically at home. Is that?
I can tell you as the principal in charge of the math department, I can speak. We talked about that, and no. Right now in a block schedule, the math department's giving kids 2 days worth of homework at one time, because I'm not gonna see you for another couple days. So we're covering twice the content in a block. It would actually not change the total volume of the homework. It would probably lessen how much is given at one time. We can cover one concept in one day and the homework, come back the next day, recheck, and then you could get the next concept, rather than try to crunch 2 concepts into one block.
And the idea of having a daily class of 50 minutes versus an alternating block of 85 means you're getting, for every 2 days, you're getting 100 minutes versus 85. So the time overall would be more in the classroom with the teacher.
Every other day you'd have 15 more minutes in the class with the teacher, so there's more opportunity.
I'm just curious, we talked about the percentages of people in favor versus not in favor of the teachers. Is there a particular group or segment of your teachers who would prefer the block schedule for any particular reason? Like, what's the argument there? What hinders that population from being agreeable to a 7-period schedule?
Well, I don't want to put necessarily words into folks' mouth. I mean, I don't want to speak for
I'm
others.
just saying, is there a large, is there a large segment? I'm sure there's a mix between
Yeah,
the different
I
academies.
think there are a
but-
lot of folks in different academies. I think there are concerns among those who teach lab type classes, as far as 7-period day and reducing time within some of the lab classes. I know it's a concern for some types of lab classes, while I'm also the principal in charge of the science department, and a majority of my science teachers are very much in favor of the 7-period day, because they understand the total amount of time that they are going to be afforded. That extra roughly month of instruction time that they're going to be afforded is more valuable to them. It's almost like if someone were to give you $100 over 2 days, or $85 now. They would rather take the $100 over 2 days.
A little more very quickly, so you said that it would enable the expansion of curriculum. It seems like we have, huge opportunities and a variety of classes and curriculum. So could you just expand on that a little bit?
As a principal, one of my goals is to expand our opportunities for students in AP type classes. We added AP chemistry this year, and I'm hoping to utilize the 7-period day and some of our flexible scheduling to enhance AP offerings, but also offerings of college courses, especially through 0-hour opportunities.
And so what percentage of students would that benefit, do you think?
Right now, increasing our AP offerings in chemistry, we offered one course this year, and it was so popular we had to add a second section to it. I'm not sure about the total percentage of students that we have taking AP courses. I just know that they're very popular, and our students want to get in there. It's going to affect our students at the top, adding those extracurricular pieces. I don't know an exact percent that we have that is there with our college. I know our college enrollment is going up every year. Our AP enrollment's going up every year. I want to find ways to make sure we continue that trend. This is the first time in a while we've been able to offer AP English 2 years in a row because of student interest. I want to keep trying to make sure that continues to happen.
And then my final question, maybe this should be asked a little bit earlier, but from the board initiative, you wanted to investigate scheduling models.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious as to why it was just the block schedule and the 7-period day. I've seen different models out there that has a combination of that, or why did you focus on the 7-period?
We did. The first group did present to staff a flex block, which was in between a block and a 7-period day, or block. We asked 2 questions. Number 1, do you favor something different? 70% said yes. The second question was, if we went to something different, which of these models would you support? And so a flexible block model was considered by the first group and presented to teachers. That's where they voted 78% for a 7-period day.
So they absolutely were not
A
interested.
modified block, they
A modified block was, we presented them with that option, and they went 78% for a 7-period day.
Thank you.
I just wonder what types of classes other than science and math classes are affected by maybe having a need for a longer time period.
Band, music, some of our career and technical education classes that use welding materials, equipment, things like that, that might benefit for a longer period of time. One of those, so we made sure one of those teachers was on that first committee with Mr. Van John, and that career and tech ed was represented through the second committee with at least 3 members, a teacher, a counselor, and the career and tech ed rep. So we made sure we included them. There are options for us for flexible scheduling, double blocking classes. We've got other options available to us that we can utilize within a 7-period day concept. We haven't shut the door to any of those.
So that was discussed pretty fully of how to accommodate some
We
of
made sure
this.
that career and tech ed folks were included in each of our committees as far as developing this. All we have done is research, put the question out, and then develop what a model might look at. We haven't closed the door to any flexible scheduling as far as double blocking, using 0 hour to our advantage, using night school to our advantage. We haven't closed the door on any of that. All we've done is presented, here's what one might look like. As far as start times, end times, planning time. There are 7-period days being utilized in the Olathe School District, in the Topeka School District, Wichita, Manhattan. Hutchinson has a 6-period block. They still meet the needs of their kids. There are laboratories of living varieties of schedules out there in the state that we can take a look at. We haven't closed the door to any of that. Mostly because there are some unanswered questions that before we get too far down this pathway, we need answered as far as the negotiated pieces. So we haven't closed the door to any of that. All we've done is present what a start time, end time, class times might look like. We've got a lot of options available to us for different things.
On the proposed 7-period day would have a 28-hour graduation requirement, or no, a 28, it would allow for 28
It would allow for 28.
credit, but only a 24-hour
Yes.
requirement.
Yep.
So would we contemplate still allowing early graduation for those students who were interested in doing that?
Yes, absolutely. Those students would have to, be a little more difficult for them to get to 24 hours in 3 years, or most likely it would take 3.5 to be able to do that, but that's what our kids are doing right now. So we would still keep that door open to those who are ready to begin their life at college, here at our community college or elsewhere, or ready to begin the world of work. We'd still keep that avenue open.
And one of the slides showed that there would be an additional 22.5 hours per year per class of contact time for the students with their teacher.
Yep.
But that's correct?
Well, that's if you take your 50 minutes per day over 2 weeks. That's 500 minutes of instructional time per class, 10 days and 2 weeks. With a block schedule, you're at 425. That's an extra 75 minutes every 2 weeks. We multiply that times 18 to get the total number of minutes in a year if we used a 36-week model.
Well, if we get 22 and a half extra hours per class, that's 157 and a half hours per year if you just take.
Yeah, if you took all of them, yes.
So that's
Contact
like,
time.
Of teacher contact time with students in an academic setting, yes.
That's an extra 3 weeks of class time for those students,
Yeah.
is that?
That was the selling point for a lot of our teachers, back to Tim's question and Mark's question, about planning time, or I guess it was Tim's question, the trade-off. Our teachers said, wow, you can get me an extra 3 weeks of time with my kids, an extra month of instruction time with my kids? Wow. That's awesome. Think what we could do with that.
And that's without changing substantially the amount of time, the start and end of the year time.
No, that's not changing any of our start and end times. Yeah, that's increasing the amount of time that teachers and students are in contact. That, for me, was the selling point. As I said at the beginning of this, we've got great teachers. We've got outstanding teachers. Every minute I can get our students with those teachers is a benefit to those kids. And that's where I'm coming from with that.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to start by saying, our district's number one asset is our teachers. And that's hands down, I don't think anyone can argue that. So you had me at increased student contact time at the beginning of your presentation. And then I looked at the rest of your presentation, and I'm gonna continue to look at this after tonight's meeting, as try to convince me otherwise. Why isn't this a good idea to go to a 7-period day? So I just wanted to kind of walk through my thoughts as I made some notes during the presentation. I'm a huge fan of PLC time. In fact, I was such a big fan of it. I bordered on, let's make it mandatory. I was a minority in that position. So with that being said, I'm relieved to find out that the teachers support this. In light of that, I think, Tim, you put a great spotlight on that subject, because the teachers are gonna have to give up something that they really appreciate and have been kind of fighting for in order to get something else that they think is even more important, which is student achievement, student contact time, all that stuff. So again, I think that speaks miles for the quality of teachers we have in our district. So they're willing to put their personal needs aside for the needs of the students, is how I interpret that. Is that how you, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's, we do have great teachers, and that's the trade-off as you presented it. We put this presentation to our teachers in their PLCs and said, here's what you asked for, information on the 7-period day, and a disadvantage is plan time, PLC time, and the 65% of them still voted in favor of it.
The next thing that really struck me, and I listened very closely to Mr. White at the beginning of this meeting, and my first thought is, why did his students tend to fall in the category of in favor of this? And I don't know the answer to that, but my hypothesis is that his students have a higher attention span, possibly, and could crave that time and that intensity and that level and that depth you can get into a curriculum or a course, potentially. And then throughout your presentation, I'm listening to some of the other pros and cons, and at-risk students. Dana brought that up as well. I think at-risk students need more daily pieces of instruction and more closer contact. And then unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, is what it is. I think our student population as a whole would benefit that daily contact.
I wholeheartedly concur. Daily contact with that teacher helps our students who are most at risk.
Makes smaller doses, more palatable,
Which-
pieces of information, I think would go.
It also goes to the
And that's why your
homework
avid
question.
group, not that your avid are necessarily at risk, but they're kind of in that cusp of, they can go either direction, let's make sure they go the direction that's good for them. I think it was great that your avid group kind of themed the direction of the 7-period day. But I think Mr. Whitehead had some good points, and something I learned from Dr. Dennis is data is strong. And if there is no data to support one or the other, then it's more, we can leave it up to more subjective reasons why we're doing one thing or another, or we can customize it to our student population. But I think there should be some data that we should try to drill into to try to find out, are we missing something? Or, I don't know, maybe challenge our committee to dig a little deeper into data.
I agree. We've looked at a lot of it, and I know Mr. White has looked at a lot of it. There's not a lot of firm data as he presented that says this or this. What I'm looking at this with the data is the data that you mentioned earlier, and that's the solid data of increased teacher-student contact time. That's the biggest piece of data for me. As I said multiple times, and I'll say again, I believe in our teachers. We've got great teachers, and any minute I can get our kids with them is a win for our kids, particularly our most at-risk kids.
Thank you. I feel like I had a lot of the same questions they did, and a couple of mine are more informational because I'm a newbie, but what does MTSS stand for?
MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. It's our state program where we provide academic assistance or enrichment to students who are in need of it. And we used to have classes developed to assist students who were struggling at the high school with their state assessments, hoping to bring some of those back and have some of those MTSS opportunities as scheduled classes for remediation with the 7-period day.
So they're an intervention type?
Yes. Right now we are doing it for freshmen only, some sophomores, but mostly freshmen, and during mentoring time, I'm hoping to bring those opportunities throughout and be able to actually place them in a class schedule.
I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, no, that's good question.
And I guess the lunch periods, how would going from changing to the 7-period schedule affect the lunch periods? Is there currently 4?
There are currently 4.
Okay.
The biggest change is we'd have to turn them over quicker. We'd have to work with our custodians on our processes to turn over the cafeteria from one lunch shift to the next lunch shift.
So will that shorten the students' lunch period or just the time?
Yeah, the actual time currently is 28 minutes,
Okay.
and it will go down to 25.
I know that's not a deciding factor.
No,
One thing we've noticed is at the lunch, and we supervise lunches, is that it doesn't take them that long to eat. In fact, most of them are antsy to get out of the cafeteria well before the time they're supposed to get out of it.
We feed 525 or more in about 10 minutes to get them through the line. And so, yeah, that's a good question on lunch, and that's a big part of what we do. And it will cause us to, like I said, rethink our procedures as far as our cafeteria staff and our custodial staff for turning over the lunchroom quicker from one group to the next, but that's doable.
And I guess my other question was, how does the current plan time for teachers at high school level compare to the elementary and middle school levels, or is that even a comparison?
Well, there are, I believe they're the same as far as personal planning time. That's a negotiated piece. Right. There are, I'm sorry.
The high school is slightly more than the middle schools and the intermediate centers. And I want to say slightly more than the elementary.
Again, that negotiated piece on
Right.
on that's beyond our.
And then I guess, do you feel like there'll be less kids that graduate? I think somebody touched on this, but I kind of had a point to make on that. If there'll be less kids graduating early or wanting to leave early. And on that note, has there been any data on whether kids who spend the full 3.5 to 4 years in high school are more successful after the fact? Or that even a factor in?
There's no data there that I know of on comparing 3-year, 3.5, or 4-year graduates on what we might judge as success or not. I think this might cause a reduction in the number of students leaving after 3 years, but 3.5 on this, as I said, a large number of our kids do right now is still doable on this. That doesn't change.
3 is doable if
They have to put the work in.
Night school, E2020, 0 hours.
It'll take a little more work to get there in 3 than we currently have. Maybe another class or maybe another 2 classes for a semester, but 3.5 is certainly well within reach of.
Well, I guess I feel like in that situation, I am the type that there's so much for opportunity for them to learn why they're in those 4 years that if they're willing, I know there's students that have reasons, you know, that they need to leave earlier, but if that opportunity is there for them to get more out of it. I think that's a question. Thank you.
Tim, did that cover all your questions that you had? You said you had a few others, but you were gonna. Okay. Well, I want to thank both of you, and I want to thank the committee members as well for all of their hard work. I really appreciate the systems that you had in place for going through this and presenting it to us and presenting it to the teachers. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. I appreciate what you guys are, you know, you're sitting and listening to a lot of this. You know, it's been a lot of tough work for the people on the committee. I think we've dutifully done what we were asked to do as far as investigate and see what it might look like. And I think our actions really have been driven by the expressed interest of a majority of our staff. And so I think we've done right by them also in investigating what they have said they're interested in seeing.
Madam President, first, I want to compliment Mr. Nordby and his staff. What seemed like maybe kind of an easy thing in a board goal that we doled out to the high school is a little more complex and a little more difficult than it might appear on paper. With an issue like this, we're not going to get 100% agreement. There's going to be divergent opinions on this, and understandably so. And to that end, Mr. Whited, thank you for coming tonight and having the courage to step out here and address the board and share your thoughts. And I know the board will read the material that you provided them and respect your opinion as well as we move forward.
I appreciate the time, Dr. Farmer, I really do.
Absolutely. And while we're not asking the board to make a decision tonight or even here in the near future, we felt it was important for you to begin to get this information. Next, I think it's important that we realize that we charged in the goal that the high school study the efficiency. And efficiency isn't always about cost. Had a meeting last Monday where we tried to get people at the state level to understand that. We weren't very successful there. But efficiency is really about doing the best we can with the resources that we have that are available. And I really want to compliment the high school for understanding that and putting in place a process to help kind of move you in that direction. Lastly,